at home. And before he gets anywhere, we hear him from the neighborhood when people are greeting. And we would run and kneel, get ourselves ready, put everything together because our father hated a mess. That is what he was telling me. And he says, to date, even in my home, I come home, I expect the same order. So that is childhood trauma for him because he thought that is what is expected in life. When a father comes home, kids have to run off and, be busy and everything has to be put in order. But sometimes that adds uncalled for pressure and stress to our lives. Now, that is what we are going to be talking about today, guys. If you have nowhere to go this Friday and you have no one to talk to this Friday, you're in the right place. Let's talk about childhood trauma in relationships. And Roger says, read his comment. Welcome, mommy. Oh, thank you, Rogers. And guys, it's a live chat. Drop your comments. I will be able to read them as and when they drop in. And together, let us chat Friday night away. Now, let's go through some types of traumas because there are different types of traumas that we have or go through when we are growing up. There is the emotional neglect. Yeah. It's a trauma that we'll be dealing with. There is the physical and sexual abuse. Some people get to go through that. There is the witnessing domestic violence. We will talk about that one in depth. There is parentification. When I say parentification is when you had to be the parent to your parent. Probably your father was a drug, or your mother was a drug abuser or chemical, an alcoholic who gets drunk and they just drink and falls in places and you end up cleaning after them. It's called parentification, where you had to be the adult to an older person. That is also childhood trauma. Abandonment, whether physical or emotional. So we are going to be dealing with those different types of trauma. There is something called the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. These are to the extreme. Things that you went through as a child that are to the extreme. To date, you remember them. There's a friend of mine who told me while growing up, she was made to do a lot of housework. I mean, it's okay to do housework growing up, but there's the extreme, what we call the adverse, that goes beyond. She was told one time to cook food, and she was also a child herself. And they told her to make groundnuts. Those of you who know groundnuts, and she put them on fire. In Uganda, we use charcoal stoves, and the poor girls put it on fire and didn't know groundnuts boil over. They spill, and if you're not careful and the heat is too much, they'll just spill over and you have an empty pot at the end of the day. So she let the groundnuts boil and they spilled over and even poured on her feet and she was scarred. To date, she has scars from the boiling or cooking of the guineas. But she was not only blamed for the pouring, but also beaten. And yet she had wounds to nurse, remember, from the burns. So that is trauma for her. She grew up now. She's a bigger girl. But guess what? She doesn't even like groundnuts to date. Why? Because of the trauma, that the experience she got growing up and having to prepare groundnuts at home at such an early age. So trauma, guys, that is adverse. Yeah, it's called the ACEs, the adverse childhood experience. Studies show that the more likely you are to struggle with things like depression and addiction. Yes, unstable relationships can also come in play. Now, if for her, she went through that, I don't know what you went through, but because it's a live chat, go ahead and drop in the comment section what it is that you have as childhood trauma. What is it that you went through and you can never forget? Remember what we said about trauma or childhood trauma. It's anything from your early years that overwhelmed your ability to cope. If there is anything that overwhelmed you and you could not cope with, that is childhood trauma. So tell us in the comment section, Rogers, Dina, if there is anything that, and Cedric, even Kira Nekori, If there's anything that you've gone through as a child and still remember to date, and probably has shaped the way you do things or shaped the way you react to in relationships, share and let us know what it is for you. Yeah, thank you, Dina, for your comment. You said being depressed at a young age is not a joke. I think Dina is still writing. It is not a joke to be depressed at an early age. Now, like I said, there are things that can cause us to have, trauma. Like I said, it's the emotional neglect. Yeah. An example of the emotional neglect is, you have parents, but they really don't care, or caretakers. Probably your parents were not there growing up, but the caretakers really didn't care about how you felt, how things they were doing were affecting you. That is trauma. And it can really hurt you, and you grow up into this adult that is sided. You always feel like you're always seeking for someone who will hear you out, who will understand you, who will be on your side, who will listen to you. That was trauma for you. Physical and sexual abuse. Many people go through that. If you've been through that, guys, and you feel like you want to talk about it, go ahead and drop in the comment section. We'll be able to read your comment. And I hope at the end of the day, you get some help and feel relief in talking about whatever it is that happened to you. Because if we don't talk about, there's something about uh, Western countries. They have different clubs, they have different associations where you can go and deal with whatever it is that you're going through. Say, like you lost a child, there are those grieving groups. You just went through a divorce, there are those grieving groups, or groups that help you cope with that. If you're struggling with alcohol, there are groups that encourage you so you can stay on the right track and actually quit drinking. If you're struggling with drugs, anger management, they've got these different avenues where they can let out what it is that is bottling within them. Now, for us who don't have, feel free, guys, on this live chat to drop in the comment section what it is that you experienced as a child and how is it affecting your relationships to date. Because there's a story, someone wrote here and he said his name is James. Let me He says he grew up in a home where his feelings didn't matter. He was told to stop crying or toughen up. And as a child, he learned to suppress emotions. Fast forward, he says 20 years later, now he's in a relationship with a partner and he says he needs to talk. Suddenly, his chest tightened when he wanted to talk to his partner because he had never been hurt. So he says he shut down and lashed out. It's not about the current situation, it's his old wounds that were coming up on surface. Yeah. So this is his story. But again, guys, you can tell me in the comment section what one word can describe how you felt in your childhood home. Was it safe? Was it feeling safe was it safe growing up where you grew up? Was it lonely? Was it chaotic? Or were you ignored growing up? Like one of those kids that grow up, no one seems to notice you. And even if you fail, no one was there to say, sorry, to see that you are hurt and you get some attention. You know, if there is any of those guys, go ahead and share and let us find healing in sharing. And Cedric says, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Cedric. Thank you so much for tuning in and always keeping it right here. I know we had that glitch in our podcast, but you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for staying on even when you could have left. And it's a live chat. Go ahead and drop in the comments. We are talking about childhood trauma in relationships. How trauma shows up in relationships. First, let's talk about attachment styles. Yeah, we're going to talk about attachment styles. Most of us fall into one of the four. The secure bit. You are either in the secure bit where you feel safe, you felt safe, you felt there was trust, you trust easily, you communicate well. People who grow up where they were secure, you will find that they feel safe. They don't think the world is a place that is waiting to harm them because they grew up in a secure place. They trust easily because where they grew up, they were not people who are doing, side way things, and you communicate very well. Like I like the way the whites or the Western people always ask you, and they make, oh, so how did that make you feel? And how are you feeling right now? Well, some of us grew up in places where those were not questions that were asked. So we grew up in one of these other ones where we are anxious because, like I said, most of us fall into the four categories. It's either the secure, where you grew up where it was safe, parents were there, they took care of you, they made sure your needs are met, no one was abusing you. And then there were those who grew up in secure settings, can easily trust because they think the world is this safe place where anyone can go and be anything. And they communicate very well. Those people who grew up in secure places. But then there is the anxious type. Yeah. You worry people will leave you because probably your father walked out on you, or your mother left you with your dad, or both parents were not there, and you are at the mercies of the world. They are those types who are the anxious ones. You need trust and reassurance all the time because no one was constantly there in your life growing up. So that is also another type, the anxious type, the secure type, and then there is the avoidant type. Yeah, you keep people at a distance because you were kept at a distance growing up.